What's up guys, my name's Brandon and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss the latest in the world of iOS, including the new iOS 16.4.1 update and why you should not wait to install it, along with updates on iOS 16.4 and 16.5 Beta 1. We're also going to discuss iOS 17 leaks and the potential supported devices, the new leaked iPhone 15 Pro color, Apple's plan for non-Pro iPhones to get the 120Hz ProMotion display, why Tim Cook and Apple were wrong about AR and how their headset could be the last hope for the industry, another wild and violent AirTags story, and much more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with all things Apple, make sure to click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss next week's episode. Also, make sure to check out my new Apple Den newsletter where I share unfiltered Apple news and opinions, and I share wallpapers. All kind of fun stuff happens over there on the newsletter. So that will be linked down in the description below. It is completely free. All right, so let's start with the surprise update of the week, and that is iOS 16.4.1. Now, the update itself is not the surprising part, but the Friday release is the surprising part. Apple rarely releases software on Fridays, so it did catch us by surprise, but it didn't really include anything major. So we did get a fix for Siri not responding, and also for the pushing hands right here. We can now have the pushing hand emoji in multiple different colors of, skin. Before it was just stuck on the default yellow color, but now we can change it to all the different skin tones, and now we technically have the full 31 emojis included with the 16.4 updates. So those two updates are extremely minor, and you may be wondering, why would Apple push out an update if it only fixes those two very minor bugs? That doesn't seem like something that needs to be pushed out on a Friday afternoon, and you would be correct. The real reason Apple released this is because there are two actively exploited bugs that are patched with 16.4.1. So if we reference Apple's security contents page, we can see these two bugs. So first off is the I/O Surface Accelerator bug, and the impact of this is pretty severe. So an app may be able to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges. Apple is aware of a report that this issue may have been actively exploited. And if you ever see the words kernel privileges and actively exploited in the same, area right here in the same paragraph, that is something you do not want to ignore. That is something you want to take very seriously if you care at all about the security of your device. And then we have the WebKit bug, where the impact is processing maliciously crafted web content may lead to arbitrary code execution, and this one was also being actively exploited through Safari. So again, two actively exploited bugs. Anytime you see that, it is very much advised to go ahead and update to make sure your device is as secure as possible. So there's really nothing else to talk about with 16.4.1 aside from those bug fixes and the security patches. You're not going to really see any type of change in the performance or the battery life. All right, so now let's move on to iOS 16.4 and 16.5 Beta 1. So first off, iOS 16.4, for some reason, this is the update that removed the select all from Safari. So now when you select text or you select anything in Safari, there is no longer an option to select all. And this is still not there in 16.4.1 or in 16.5. So this makes me think that this is not a bug, but rather just a change made to iOS for some reason where you cannot select everything on a web page with the tap of a button. And then something else I wanted to mention is related to Wi-Fi. So iOS 16.4 introduced a lot of Wi-Fi issues. So I know a lot of users, I've seen it on the forums, here in my comments, a lot of people are reporting that their Wi-Fi keeps asking them for the password every other day, or sometimes their Wi-Fi just goes in and out. Just Wi-Fi issues in general. And for some reason, that was still not addressed with 16.4.1. I know some users are still having issues with that. So I would expect to see that fixed maybe in the next beta of iOS 16.5. And some users are also reporting loud system sounds on 16.4, but that's something I've pretty much experienced since like iOS 5. So I don't know if you guys are experiencing anything different with system sounds, but that is something that I have seen quite often in the comments over the past couple of weeks after updating to 16.4. Now I cannot finish this week off without talking about the weather application, because this past week was brutal for the weather application. Apple had a nightmare scenario scenario this week because the weather app was down multiple times. The widgets were blank, the forecast data was completely wrong, it just wouldn't load at times, and it lasted for several hours, and it happened multiple times. Now, thankfully, most of those issues have been fixed server side, but there are still some outstanding issues that I've noticed with the weather application, both myself and from you guys mentioning it in comments. So things like false severe weather alerts, or just not getting those severe weather alerts at all, and also wrong forecast animations. It's like if you go in here, you can see the background, kind of lines up with what we're seeing, but if it's raining, sometimes people would report not seeing rain at all. It would show that it's sunny, even though it's raining outside. And then I did just want to briefly mention the music app changes are just getting better and better by the day, especially when you add something to a playlist or to the queue. The little, alert down there is so much better. I'm able to move around so much quicker in the music application. I don't have to wait for that big, alert in the middle to go away until I can add a new song to play next or into a playlist. So I just want to say props to Apple for finally fixing this after so many years. It's getting so much better. One of the lesser known features in iOS 16.4 is the new widget for Wallet for order tracking. So we have 3 widgets here for order tracking. And if I go ahead and add one of these, I notice that my packages don't actually show here in the widgets. So this appears to be a bug, and this is on 16.4 through 16.5. So 16.4 introduced this new widget right here, but for some reason my packages are not showing, even though I did purchase it with my Apple Card and it shows up in the wallet application. And then when it comes to performance and battery life, I'm going to stand by what I said previously. I've noticed a slight improvement, especially in the battery life, and the performance seems a little bit better just because I don't have as many bugs now, but raw performance is about the same as it has been for a while. But I do think battery life has gotten a little bit better from 16.3 and 16.3.1. Now, when it comes to iOS 16.5 beta 1, honestly, I'm not using that all too much. So this past week, I think I picked up and used 16.5 for like half of one day, whereas usually I spend half the week using the new betas, but I'm just not really interested in 16.5. It's a very minor update, really nothing to talk about aside from starting a screen recording via Siri. Really nothing to talk about. So I would expect to see the second beta very soon though. So let's go ahead and talk about that actually. I may as well, transition into the calendar here and talk about what to expect next. So I would expect to see iOS 16.5 beta 2 next week. So I did predict that with the first beta, which came out 2 weeks ago after, this coming week. So 2 weeks ago, we got the first beta, and I said that we're probably going to skip a week and then get the second beta on the week of the 10th, and it's looking like that is exactly what's going to happen. Now, I would not expect that on Monday. I would expect to see the second beta on either Tuesday or Wednesday. So we do have Easter Sunday and Easter Monday, so 2 holidays right there, and then on the 11th will be the first day that we could see 16.5 beta 2. And then we should see the final release of iOS 16.5 at some point in May. Now, we do have all the way until May to get the 16.5 public release, so that means that we do have some time for a 16.4.2. Now, 2 double point updates is not super common. Like, it's happened before, but it's not super common to get like a 0.4.1 and a 0.4.2. So that usually happens in the earlier stages of iOS releases, but it is always a possibility. It's Apple after all, and there are quite a few bugs out there that still need addressed. So if we were to see a 16.4.2, I would say that we need to see that either on the week of the 17th or the week of the 24th. If we don't get it on one of those 2 weeks, I don't think we're going to see it at all. I do not see that being released in May, the same month that we're going to see 16.5. But as always, these are just my predictions. And of course, Apple could push out an update at any given time if there are, actively exploited bugs or some, really serious issue that they need to push out an update for. But anyways, moving on to June is when we're going to see iOS 17 beta 1. So right there on June 5th, I will be live streaming that here on YouTube. I will be live streaming the Worldwide Developers Conference and also showing you guys the first look at iOS 17. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that live stream and all the videos I'll be making that week. So now I want to cover some more iOS related news and other tidbits before the main news section of this episode. So the first thing I want to mention is that Apple stopped signing iOS 16.3.1. So if you are into downgrading, you are no longer able to downgrade to 16.3.1. And I would assume that 16.4 will get unsigned later this month because we did just get 16.4.1. So just know that. that. Now, also this week, we saw that iOS 17 might include a major change to the control center. So according to a MacRumors source who does have a track record, he's saying that we could see a big change coming to the control center. And this has basically looked the same since iOS 11. We've not really had a big change to the control center in quite some time. So that would be nice, but still, just like all the leaks right now, that's pretty vague. I mean, a major change to the control center could mean like what? I mean, there's so much here that I don't see Apple completely revamping this. So it has to be something about one of these sections right here. So what do you guys want to see changed in the control center? Me personally, I'm a fan of the current control center. It is kind of clunky, especially with all of these HomeKit devices here, but I don't really know what I would change about the control center. So let me know down in the comments below what you think should change. And then speaking of iOS 17, we also got conflicting reports in regards to support for the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, and especially for the iPhone 10. So we did see somebody say that the iPhone 10 will be dropped, and then the same MacRumors source, who is apparently trustworthy and has a track record, is saying that no, all iOS 16 devices are going to get iOS 17. So I don't know. I personally, I think that the iPhone 10 will still be supported by iOS 17. I don't have any type of insider information here. I just have a feeling that the iPhone 10 will be supported for one last year. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think the iPhone 10 should be supported with iOS 17 or should it be dropped? So I also wanted to mention something pretty interesting that I found this past week in regards to the apps on the App Store top free charts list. So for the first time, potentially ever, the top 5 apps on the US App Store were not made in the USA. So you can see that every application besides the number 3 application was made in China, and that number 3 app was made in Turkey. So that's pretty interesting, especially with the potential of the upcoming TikTok ban. It's pretty interesting to see that, the top 5 was pretty much dominated by Chinese companies and Chinese apps on the US App Store. Also, S-GPT is a new shortcut that was just released by Federico Viticci. Amazing shortcut that integrates ChatGPT into native features and functions in iOS. So like I can tie in the music application, my calendar, my clipboard, all of that. It's so much better than just, having a ChatGPT built into Safari. It's so much cheaper than that. If you want to download that, I will have it linked in the description below, but I will have a full video coming very soon on how that works and what all you can do with it. And speaking of shortcuts, another new shortcut I just found out about is called Checkmate, and this allows you to see if somebody paid for Twitter Blue or not. So you guys know that now when you go onto Twitter and you have the blue verified badge, it simply just says that you're verified because you're either subscribed to Twitter Blue or it's a legacy verified account. It doesn't tell you which one until you have a shortcut like this one. So if I go to somebody's profile on Twitter and go to the 3 dots up in the top right and then go to share, you will see that we have the Checkmate shortcut right here. When you press on that, it's going to show you if that person paid for Twitter or not straight from within the Twitter application. So you can see this person paid for Twitter. And if you go to somebody's account who is legacy verified and go to the Checkmate right here, you will see that it shows they are verified, but they also bought Twitter Blue anyway. So it'll show you more details about their verified badge. And for all of my viewers in India, you guys are always so nice. I love you guys, by the way. But Apple's first retail store is opening up at the end of April. And this week, Apple released the first image of the barricade along with new wallpapers to download, which I will leave these linked down in the description below. But pretty cool. I love the look of this and look forward to that opening at the end of this month. India is a big market for the iPhone and for Apple products in general. So I would imagine this retail store is going to do pretty well. And speaking of other countries, new Apple Maps features like look around, lane guidance, share ETA, natural language guidance, and more have just rolled out to these countries right here. So you're going to have a lot more info and a lot more use for actually using Apple Maps compared to third parties. So it's nice to see all of these features finally come to all of these other countries who didn't have it beforehand. All right, so now let's move on to the main news section of this episode. All right, so let's start with the iPhone 15 Pro and how pretty much everything at this point has leaked, including the new exclusive color. And I am very excited for this color because according to 95 Mac, this new color is a deep red color, and this is something I've been waiting on for several years now, along with everybody else. I feel like this is rumored every single year, but it doesn't seem like there's ever like a really good source that says it. But now that 95 Mac and multiple other sources are saying it, I could actually see it happening this year. We're also hearing that it's going to have a titanium frame. It's going to have a thicker camera bump, meaning that we're going to have some potential big improvements to the camera. We're going to have USB-C, of course. We're going to have the haptic volume and mute buttons, and the record-breaking small bezels measuring at 1.55 millimeters. So you better believe if the iPhone 15 Pro comes in this deep red color, I will be buying that instantly. That's not like I don't buy every phone instantly anyways, but you know what I mean. That is a color I am going to love and cherish for my whole life. That sounded weird, but anyways, we're going to move on to the latest Mac news. So we now have news on the Macs and why Apple has halted M2 chip production. So according to the Elec, Apple has halted production of its M2 series chips at the start of 2023 due to a pronounced slump in global demand for MacBooks. So this could also explain why an M2 iMac or M2 Mac Studio are really nowhere to be seen at the moment, and we really haven't even heard any rumors of these coming. We've heard about the M3 variant of the iMac, but not M2, so this could kind of explain that as well. And while a lot of people were kind of concerned with Apple's, slump in sales for the MacBook, I'm more so looking at it from the point of like, I think this is more of a testament for the M1 series MacBooks, because think about it, or the iMacs, because think about it, everybody who has an M1 machine is most likely not even looking at or caring about the M2 machines. And, most people that upgraded to the M1 series upgraded from a much older MacBook or iMac or whatever the machine was. So they're not looking to upgrade, the next year or within the next like 5 years, I would say. Most people don't upgrade their MacBooks for several years, much longer than like iPhone. So again, I just think this is a big testament to how good the M1 series chips were and how well optimized they were. I think that's why we're seeing a slump in sales for the M2 chips. And speaking of a slump in sales, we have to talk about the AR VR headset. I know some of you guys are tired about hearing this, but just listen to this little tidbit here, because I found this pretty interesting about the current, market of AR VR headsets. So Meta and Sony are at the top right now, and take a look at these numbers. Sony is cutting its 2023 production plan for the PSVR 2 by 20%. And then for the Meta Quest, the product lifecycle shipment for the Meta Quest Pro is only around 300,000 units. But it gets even worse. Pico, which is China's largest AR VR headset brand, the shipments in 2022 were more than 40% lower than expected. So the market is struggling, and this is honestly probably the worst time possible for Apple to enter into this market, but they're planning to do so anyways, and they could be the big savior of this market if they could actually pull this off. And according to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple is kind of the last hope for this market in general. So here's what he said: there is currently insufficient evidence to suggest that AR VR headsets can become the next star product in consumer electronics in the foreseeable future. Apple's announcement event is likely the last hope for convincing investors that AR and mixed reality headset devices could have a chance to be the next star product in consumer electronics. So even though this big slump in sales could just be due to everybody just waiting to see what Apple unveils, because why would you spend $500 if Apple is just going to release a superior product within the next year or two? It doesn't make any sense. So I feel like a lot of people are just kind of holding off right now and waiting to see what Apple's going to release. So they could be the savior. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be very interesting. And on a related note, by the way, Tim Cook did just recently have a cool little sit down, a cool little cover with GQ here. And he talked about being wrong about the AR glasses and just AR in general. And he was on record saying that Google Glass would flop, which by the way, he wasn't wrong about that. They did kind of flop. I don't see them anywhere anymore. They're kind of ahead of their time, but still. But he did mention also that he was wrong about the potential for AR headsets and glasses. Now let's move on to beyond the iPhone 15. Let's talk about future iPhones, more specifically the display technology behind those future iPhones. So according to Ross Young and the DSCC, here's what the roadmap of the iPhone display tech looks like. So the iPhone 15 and 16, nothing crazy for these in terms of the display, but for the iPhone 17 in 2025, this is going to be the year when the non-Pro models finally adopt that ProMotion display. And then for the 17 Pro that year, they're going to have the hole punch design which is going to replace the, notch up top, or the, I guess, pill up top. And then it's going to also have the under panel Face ID. And then for the iPhone 19 and 19 Pro in 2027, this is when we're going to see the under panel Face ID and the under panel camera. So pretty much everything beneath the display. And this is also the year when the base model iPhone 19 is going to get the under panel Face ID and that hole punch that the Pros got 2 years prior in 2025. So it's pretty cool to see the roadmap and the potential future for these displays. And this comes from a very reliable source, by the way. So this is most likely going to be accurate. Now, I do have some beef here, because why is the ProMotion display being held off on putting on the base model phone until 2025? I don't understand that. This is not some new revolutionary technology. You know what I mean? Like, the ProMotion display has been around for a while. I just don't understand why Apple cannot put that on the base model phone when so many others are putting 120 hertz on their base model phone. I hope that changes. All right, let me sit back and stop being so serious. Let's talk about some funny/crazy stories here. And the first one is really crazy. So thieves in Washington cut a hole into the Apple Store from a bathroom in a coffee shop next door. This is like straight up Prison Break style, like Alcatraz style. So, since the Apple Store was closed for the day, nobody was there to stop them when they cut that hole and entered in. So they stole approximately 436 iPhones along with iPads and Apple Watches. Why not? The estimated cost of goods stolen was over $500,000. And when police arrived, they found no fingerprints. And after reviewing the security footage, they found that the thieves wore masks and had knowledge of the camera placements. So this is a well-organized, well-thought-out operation. And so far, it was successful. No arrests have been made. Nobody's been caught. But unless these thieves are selling to like sketchy dealers overseas, they're going to run into some issues, because Apple can report these as stolen and block the serial numbers and also the IMEI number. So if somebody tries to buy one, or if somebody does successfully buy one of these, they're not going to be able to activate it because it will be reported as stolen. So my guess is they're probably going to sell these overseas. Pretty wild stuff though. And I have to say, that is the first time I've ever seen this type of heist take place. And if you're wondering why, by the way, the coffee shop was so close and like touching the Apple Store, it's because it was in a mall. So every store is technically like touching each other, like the walls are touching each other. So that's why. And then finally, as tradition here on Apple Weekly, we have to talk about some crazy AirTags stories. So the first one is pretty wild. So it all started in San Antonio when a man's car was stolen from his driveway. And like all of you should, he did have an AirTag in the car. So because of this, he was able to track the car to a shopping center. And after calling police to report it, he then confronted the thief, which is something you should never do, by the way. Always just wait for the police to handle it. Otherwise, it can escalate like this did. So of course, a firefight did ensue and the thief was killed. And the victim of the theft is not expected to face charges. So obviously, this is not something recommended. You should always wait for police to arrive, but still, it's pretty wild that an AirTag led to this, and just another reason why you should have an AirTag in your car. And then a bonus AirTags story. This one happened over in Scotland, and it's kind of weird, but police were able to track down a stolen Range Rover after nearly a year. So it was stolen for a year, but somehow there was an AirTag the whole time in it. So maybe the police department just found out that AirTags existed and they tracked it. I don't know, but nonetheless, it got found thanks to an AirTag. So that's pretty cool. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the latest Apple news for this past week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe. I love doing these Apple Weekly episodes every single week. Also, sign up for the newsletter. That is linked down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.